All right, there we go. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Clemenz with the Z podcast. Roy here, and I'm about to do another segment in the We Were in a Cult series where I am talking with former members of the ICOC, letting them share their stories to kind of make sense of this wild freaking thing that we were in. And so today I've got Drew. What's up, Drew? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing pretty good.
That's good, man. And you reached out to me after another member that came on, Kristen.
Yeah,
So I'm excited that it's pretty funny how like someone comes on and then a friend of theirs is like, "Oh man, they did it. I'll come on." And then it just keeps coming and more people are talking, man. It's great.
domino effect.
Hmm. So let's jump right in, man. How'd you get involved in this church?
Well, I mean, I was young. I didn't really get the choice. I was living in Louisiana with my mom. She graduated college after going back, and there were better job opportunities in Atlanta. And it was kind of like we're going to Atlanta. We're gonna move in with her brother and his three kids, and my grandpa, and we're going to go. Mom was going to get a better job. And of course, while we were there, we were immediately taken to church with my uncle and his three boys on a Sunday morning. And that's how I wound up sitting
So
in an IPOC congregation.
so your uncle was a part of our church.
Yeah, him and his three boys for I don't know how long before I got there, but a little bit.
Okay. And how old were you at the time?
I was 14.
Okay. So you kind of had a little bit of like a childhood before the church.
I had I don't know if you'd call it a childhood. I wasn't much of a kid, honestly, when I got there. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, and I had not made a home run with a female yet, but I had rounded third base several times. I was, uh, I was ripe for the picking, you
Oh, so
know.
you lived a life.
I needed God, man, sitting in that room on that Sunday morning. And I think everybody could tell with me and my Jinkos and my tie-dye t-shirt,
Oh man, you had
you know.
Jinkos too? Jinkos were the
Heck yeah.
best.
Yes, they were.
Oh man, I
Still
had
do.
my favorite pair of Jinkos I ever had. Um, had it had this triangle at the bottom on the side of the legs and had some kind of Japanese or Chinese symbol on it, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Oh,
I
dude.
had I had a pair called the mug shots, and if you
Yep.
ever saw them, it looked like a bunch of mug shot images across the bottom of one of the cuffs.
Hmm.
That was my favorite pair.
Yeah. I had Jinko jeans. I had the Jinko shorts.
Hmm.
Um, God, man. Oh, Jinkos. See, that's why I think I think by the time this is over, we'll remember where we saw each other because I don't
Yeah,
remember many other people in church having Jinkos, especially in our area.
yeah. I was the only person in the church on Sunday morning wearing jinkos. I can tell you that.
I think I've said this before, but my senior year, I had to go on stage because they were like letting all the seniors, talking about all the seniors and how, I guess acknowledging them or whatever. And I had these sweatpant Jinkos on that
What
looked,
was that a thing?
yeah, it was no, it wasn't like a Jinkos because oh man, we're about to deep dive for a second on these jeans. Cause so like there was Jinko, there was this brand called Kickwear.
Yeah,
Um,
I had to wear.
because there's this girl that I loved in high school, and I used to call her the Kickwear Queen because she would always wear crop tops and kickwear. And it's like, God, this girl's beautiful. And then there was this other company called Caffeine, and it was like for like the raver kids, and I think that's how
Yeah,
I got them. I mean, not that I was a raver, but like I don't know, I thought they were rad. So I didn't know I had to go on stage and as that. So like I show up in these like sweatpant Jinko things and like some
yeah,
button-up shirt looking ridiculous.
yeah.
and everybody just in front of church, all these people just like, oh, and my parents were like, God, what is wrong with our son?
Oh, I mean, don't get me wrong. When I moved there, like I had Jinko everything, kind of like you're
Uh-huh.
describing, but I immediately had to change out my wardrobe because what was cool in North Louisiana was not so cool in Atlanta.
Yeah,
And yeah, I didn't get any clout for my 50-inch bottomed Jinko pants.
but you
It's
should have.
ridiculous.
You should
Yes,
have.
I agree.
So, all right, back on track. So is it safe to say that you weren't very religious before getting involved with the church?
That was the conflict. My grandfather was a preacher who
Uh-huh.
graduated from the same church that I attended here in Louisiana at the time. I'll describe my religious upbringing to you in 2 words:
Uh-huh.
Duck Dynasty.
Got it.
Yeah,
Say no more.
I actually I went to church with Phil Robertson and his family. Like we
Wow.
actually attended the same church. Yes.
Wow. Did they sing songs with the duck calls?
No, but the last few times I attended a service with them, they had this was post fame and they were
Uh-huh.
meeting out at their house and stuff like that. But um
That's talk about famous church. Those Duck
well,
Dynasty guys. Wow.
yeah.
Happy, happy, happy. That was his thing, right? Happy, happy, happy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like, so you knew what God was. How did you view God? Or did you even think about God back then?
I mean, back then it was just a bunch of rules, a bunch
Hmm.
of do's and don'ts, and mom or someone was always shoving us on a church bus to get us out of the house on Sunday,
Yeah.
so it was a place we were forced to go to sometimes. Um, but I wouldn't say I knew God as far as like having a personal relationship at all.
Hmm.
It was a lot of mean God. It was a lot of angry, judgy, smiting, God is what
Yeah.
I was
Hmm.
taught.
Yeah, your Jinkos weren't going to get you into heaven.
No, they were not.
So, I mean, it's gotta be I mean, you go from northern Louisiana to, Marietta and that
Yeah,
East Cobb area. That has got to be a shift, a little bit of a culture shock.
pretty big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was both awesome and confusing.
Okay.
Um, I loved Atlanta. The fishing was pretty good, and
Oh.
that was what I lived for back then, as far as a hobby went.
Hmm.
And I don't know, just Georgia seemed like a better place initially,
Uh-huh.
as a whole. Just
Got it.
better school, better electives.
So like, so anyway, so you go to this church. You're from, northern Louisiana. I mean, what was your first impressions of it?
My initial impressions were wow,
Yeah.
just awestruck. I I'd always had difficulty making friends before moving there, especially the kind of friends that my folks were okay with. Because
Yeah.
when you wear Jinkos and you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day at 14, you're not making friends with the best kinds of people. And I
Yeah.
just remember sitting there on my very first Sunday, dressed the way I was dressed, and a fella by the name of Andrew and his entourage of homies just walked right up to me. And if you had seen this guy then, I mean, like all-star baseball player, he had the haircut, the build, he looked like the kind of friend that I could introduce to my parents and say, "Hey, look, I made a friend," and they would go, "Cool," instead of "Get that dude out of my house." And so, like, just the fact that this all American hero looking kid was walking up to me to say hi and then ask me if I want to sit up front with him and his friends,
Uh-huh.
that one had such an impact on me.
Yeah, because that kind of stuff
Like,
didn't happen. No.
no,
Yeah. Yeah, so you got
that was a
loved.
big deal.
Yeah, we call it love bombing. Um,
Yes.
and so he brought you in and you felt included, and was it just like off to the races kind of thing? And you were just like, this place is great. I'm cool with all this.
For the most part. I mean, I think I needed a little bit of convincing to
Hmm.
like actually sit down and do all of the Bible studies.
Uh-huh.
But for the most part, I mean, I thought it was awesome. I thought it was
Hmm.
great initially, just, like ready made instant friendships
Yeah.
with
That's,
people who would tell you they loved you, and we were all actively trying to do better and be better. And
mhm.
it was
Yeah.
almost too good to be true,
Yeah. I get that.
you know?
So so you get into that. It's great. Everything's awesome. You acclimate yourself. And when did you decide to like, this is kind of like, I'm going to be here. I want to be at this church. I want to study the Bible, stuff like that.
Camp,
Really?
camp, man, camp. Of course, that first time I ever went to camp,
Uh-huh.
by the
Yeah.
time I came home, I had that spiritual recharge that they all talked about, and I was just vibrating with the Holy Spirit. And I had to know God better, man. I had to. It was what
Why?
everybody was doing. It was what everybody wanted me to do. It was what
Mhm.
everybody needed me to do. I needed to make everybody happy. I wanted everybody to be happy with me and what I was doing and love me.
Why did you want everyone to be happy with you?
Because I had come from a place where people honestly rarely were.
Really?
Uh, yeah,
And so was it like the fact that people kind of, you felt like people were investing in you
yeah,
and you didn't have that before?
yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
It
Hmm.
was really, it was a very, very strange thing for people to be seemingly going out of their way just to try and be a friend to me.
Hmm. Yeah.
That wasn't something I had experienced beforehand.
Hmm. That's awesome. And so, and yeah, camp, I mean, camp comes up, for a bunch of us here when we
Yeah,
talk, from a certain area. Um, yeah, man, camp was that place where like everybody talks about it, from the singing devos, right, to the messages to
I really remember the late night candle lit vigils or whatever it was we
Mhm.
called them. I loved those.
And was this at the camp that we called the swamp, or was it somewhere else?
No, I was at the swamp.
Yep. So it was brand new too. Yeah. Yeah, it was really like that's where I had my first quiet time slash study was at camp, you know. It's really easy to get into that for there. So that's cool. So you come back from camp, you're fired up. Um, you want to do this. What were the studies like for you?
For the most part, most okay. Then at the time, it was just a lot of book learning. It seemed like a lot of reading this, reading that, going over this, studying that, meeting with these people. The only study that really sticks out, 20 some odd years later, was the cross.
In what way?
Um, you had to cry. Apparently, I did not cry my first time, and that was not that it was so not okay. Apparently,
Finally, somebody who didn't, sorry, I shouldn't cheer
I
for
was
that,
I
but
was openly I was openly rebuked in front of
because
everyone else there during my studies just for not breaking down.
yeah, Yeah.
And I had to go home. I had to think about it, and we would come back next week. And I got it right that time. I cried. I made sure I did,
Uh-huh.
but
It
I
was
had to make
such
it happen too.
Mhm. Man. Yeah, I didn't mean to cheer for that. I just, some people, I've talked to a couple people who said they didn't cry and they got moved forward in it, but for some reason I didn't cry and had to do it again. It was such you had to show your brokenness, you know.
You had to, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
You had to you had to be sobbing for people to believe that you got it, you know.
I still don't get it today. I mean, then I just took it as basically, the lesson that it was,
Hmm.
and I was considering myself in it, but I didn't feel the need to have an emotional breakdown in front of the guys, you know.
Yeah. Hmm.
But again, I made sure I had that breakdown the next time.
Did you just prepare or was it just a lot of like, okay, just you need to cry?
Yeah, it was just I need to cry. I have to cry. I won't move forward. I won't move on to the next step unless I show these people some emotion.
Yeah. Well, you showed people the emotions the second time. You moved through, you got baptized. What was that like?
Very ritualistic. I mean,
Hmm.
if I'm being honest, I had the guy who converted me. I had him dunk me in the water, and afterwards, it was kind of like, okay, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
know, that's really. I mean, I don't really know how else to say it other than welcome to the club. You're one of us now.
Uh-huh.
Sort of, at least.
Yeah. No, that's fair to say that. So you're in the club, you have people that are like actively seeking you out, you've got friends. So how was it after? Was it great? Was it awesome?
It was good for a while.
Hmm.
So I do this thing called masking because I'm a bit on the spectrum.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, if someone gets to know me long enough, they'll start picking up on a lot of my weird. And
Okay.
so I think that was part of it for one. I remember a night where me and my cousins, we got into or my oldest cousin, we got in a big argument. And in the middle of it, he told me that everybody thought I was weird. Now,
Hmm.
hindsight being 2020, that makes a lot of sense because I didn't have that diagnosis then. I struggled with things and I didn't know what was going on.
Got it.
Um,
Hmm. And like struggled like just, regulating your emotions or just like show like understanding people's emotions, just all of that.
all of that, reading the room, reading
Yeah.
people's
Hmm.
faces, having good control over my volume, not
Yeah.
experiencing an anxiety attack over loud noises, smells, taste, textures, just some stuff that I don't think a lot of people necessarily have to deal with on a daily
Mhm.
basis, but a lot of times they'll kind of manifest as behavioral
Yeah.
issues. And like, I don't really like the way I got wired up either, you know.
Yeah. I get that.
But some most days I'm just doing the best I can to be the best
Hmm.
man that I can. And I like to think I do a pretty good job most days, but I'm not always well interpreted.
Hmm.
So
So
it's
do you
just
think
kind of is what it is.
so for you saying that, do you think that like people were picking up on that in the church and they didn't know what to do with you?
I think to a degree, I think there was some of that going on.
Uh,
There were a bunch of other issues that came about. I turned 18, so that was my junior year. I was a year behind. I remember I had observed my uncle and some of the older guys in the church, would occasionally smoke a cigar. Did you ever see guys in the churches smoking a cigar?
my dad didn't smoke cigars. The people around him didn't really smoke, so no. But I mean, I know of people that did. I remember in campus I smoked
Yeah.
cigars sometimes,
Well, when I
but
turned 18, I remember I bought a Black and Mild and I smoked it.
uh-huh.
And dude, I was like, after that, that was like the beginning of it's getting weird,
Yeah.
because all I did was smoke a cigar.
Uh-huh.
And all of a sudden, I was the dirty tobacco smoker that all the people that were pursuing, a friendship with me and were going out of their way and, were being kind and considerate. And, we're
Hmm.
also teaching me how to be a better person.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, no one could talk to me anymore
Because you smoked a black and mild.
because I smoked a black and mild. Or that's my perception of what
Yeah.
happened, because afterwards, everything changed,
Hmm. Yeah, we
you
had a
know?
big thing with hyper fixating on stuff. And once someone got something of a whiff of like a chink in your armor or something like that, then it was off to the races with labeling and things like that. Um, that's got to be what was that like to deal with?
I mean, it sucked. I went from 1 week, you know, having a phone constantly full of texts and appointments and meetings and prayers, stuff to meet up at, and invitations for this and that, to just crickets, man. I mean, just crickets. At the same time, me and my mom were moving to Woodstock, uh,
Yeah.
like Highway 92, like 30 minutes away, not far.
Yeah, my
And
parents lived there. I lived in Woodstock for a while, not till I was a lot
okay,
older, but yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
yeah, I used to live right by Main Street in 92,
Oh
where
wow.
the old
There used
Walmart
to
was.
there was a coffee shop there I went to called Jehovah Java one time. It was a Christian coffee shop. Because a friend of mine, my senior year in high school, when I wasn't a part of the church, he was in this Christian rock band and they played there. Um, man, anyway, guy, you're hitting me with all these memories now.
It's
So
okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm just as liable to go sidebar on you, so it's okay.
It's all
Um,
right.
I
Um, so you smoke a black and mild, you move to Woodstock, and then what feels like to you overnight, it's fair to say like you were kind of feeling cut off.
Yeah, it was like overnight ostracized. I
Uh,
think it was like a week or two later, I managed to make it over to midweek. Moving and everything being what
yeah.
it is. I uh, I go, and I've even made friends with a guy in my neighborhood, and I'm bringing somebody with me. I'm even being a good Christian.
Like
Or
you
at least I'm
brought
trying to
someone to
be.
church?
Yeah,
Wow, you brought a
I tried to. I tried to, and this was where I really realized that I was in the wrong place. And it was we show up for midweek. I've missed like one Wednesday, and no one's there. The parking lot is empty. Everyone is gone. It took me like an hour to get someone on the phone, and all they could tell me was, "Yeah, we decided to start meeting someplace else." And then I got hung up on. And my friend, who I'm trying to bring to church, is looking at me going, "Dude, these people are not your friends."
they decided to meet somewhere else and didn't tell you.
Apparently, a mass text went out and everybody got it, but I didn't. So yeah, that was a fun moment.
And so how long had you been a part of church?
I'd been about 3 years at that point, freshman to the end of my junior year.
Wow. And so for 3 years you're there, you're having these relationships, you're
Well,
doing the work, you're
yeah, even
trying
studied
to
even studied the Bible with other men. You know,
Mhm. Yeah, so you're studying the Bible with people, you're doing everything you want to do. And so like you're 18, it's legal for you to smoke a black and mild if you want to. You saw other people doing it. Was that kind of your like thing of like, I don't know, maybe this is okay. I want to do it.
yeah. I mean, it's no secret I had a tobacco addiction beforehand, and maybe that was
Yeah.
the addiction speaking to me, and maybe I should have taken the advice, but no one really ever gave me any advice either. It was just kind of like, I can't believe you did that. and then just nothing. So I don't know. It was strange to me that at our house there were cigarette or cigar butts out on the
Hmm.
back porch from the other men from church that would come over and hang out with like my uncle and stuff. I smoked one black and mild, and we snowball into I'm all alone in Woodstock,
Yeah.
making new friends, which didn't really actually go all that well in the long scheme of things.
Uh-huh.
But
That, that's got to be challenging for you to go through, you know?
yeah, it was.
Mhm.
Moving there, not really ever finding real acceptance, and then getting there and finding what felt like that, and then to just over something that is stupid today and was stupid then.
Mhm.
It
It
just
was
yeah,
just
it hurt.
such a like, it's such a, it's like optics, you know? It's,
Yeah,
it's like this outside thing, like, what is it going to look like for people and their interpretation of things? And like, oh, you can't have someone doing this or that, and like, it was all of it's just outward signs, outward, it was your work. That's what proved
yeah.
you were okay. It had nothing to do with like your heart or your that kind of stuff, you know?
Oh yeah, and that was
And then,
that was never more obvious than if you tried to be in a relationship.
mhm. What do you mean, like friendship or like relationship with a girl?
Well, I didn't get to really have one of those. There was a girl that I liked, but I was not allowed to talk to her. Not like that. I could say hi, you
Yeah.
know.
Hmm.
But the moment I said I like so and so, I was immediately told that that was the one girl I wasn't allowed to ask on a date.
Yeah, that's a whole no, I mean, we'll get to that here in a second.
Yeah,
It's just it's crazy because like how quickly what I'm finding out from these conversations. And I mean, I felt that too. I mean, I was kicked out of stuff. And so it was just like this immediate thing. As soon as you showed anything that was like you're not serious enough or anything weird, instead of coming to you and talking to you, you're just cut off, you know?
yeah.
Yeah. And so how quickly was it after that? I mean, did you hang on? Did you try, or was it like I gotta go?
Mm, I pretty well left. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of realizing that I did skip over something. Um,
Oh,
is it okay
okay.
if I backtrack just a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Backtrack. That's good.
Okay. There was an issue that I've debated about whether or not I was going to speak about. A friend of mine was in a relationship, and this is part of what really, really made things insane.
Hmm.
I don't think crazy really adds it up. They were talking. They weren't supposed to be, according to the church and the elders and all of that. And
Yeah. Hmm.
I was, I remember my discipler coming to me and telling me that a guy needed to ask the girl out so that they wouldn't have a weekend together to give them time apart. In other words, like trying to promote people asking the girl out and trying to get him to ask a different girl out so that they
Yeah.
would split up. And then I think towards the end, my own discipler had me basically sit that guy down, accuse him and her of stuff they hadn't done, and basically I was deemed I needed to say something to him to help save his soul.
Hmm.
Because if I didn't say something, if I didn't try to come between their relationship, I didn't actually love him as a friend. And I didn't love her as a sister. And that was the way it was put to me. And I just remember sitting in my car and telling my buddy that his relationship was evil and that he needed to end it. And the whole time I was doing it, it felt like the wrong thing to do. I mean, if God is love, why am I shitting on two people's love?
Yeah.
you know?
And so they were trying to get you, was it they were trying to get you to ask her out so that they would not go out on a certain weekend? They would have like space between?
I can tell you, I remember absolutely for a fact it being suggested to myself and two other guys that someone asked the girl out. And it was said that someone would get him to try and take a different girl out.
Yeah.
And
That's
I don't
mhm.
recall asking her personally, but dude, it's been 25 years. I might have.
Well, well, it's par for the course to think, because that's kind of how things were. I mean, if you like someone, in no way could you start seeing them every weekend in a
Yeah.
church. It's very much like there was a lot of people that would start getting involved. There was advice that needed to be had, blah, 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 all that stuff. There's so much control over that. And so
But
it
yeah,
would
I
be,
really resented being used to
mhm.
try and get in between two people that
did you did you in your heart believe that what they were doing was wrong? Did you see things that made you feel uncomfortable?
no, I never did personally, but
Mhm.
when all of the adults and the elders are telling you that everything they're doing is wrong, and if you care about them or you love them as a human being, you'll do something, you'll try to say something, you'll try to save them from themselves and their sinful nature,
Yeah.
you know and that's just the way it was put to me. And being, I think, 16 then, the older people are always right, they're always the boss.
Yeah. They were, man. There's a lot of control. They were so scared of just, you know, far be it for some two teenage people to like each other, you know, because
Yeah,
because only bad things can happen if teenagers like each other and start dating, you know.
I remember walking the halls of George Walton High, hating just hating myself, because I would think about a girl at some point during the day in some way that I wasn't supposed to, or I would think a cuss word, or I would think about pushing that person who wouldn't stop walking so slow in front of me, or it was just, I had to be at war with my very thoughts every moment of every day.
Yeah.
Like, because if you thought it, you might as well have done it, and that was the
Mhm.
sermon that I remember hearing. So it was like I learned very quickly to hate myself.
Yeah. Hmm. I know. You're constantly at war with all of this stuff, and you feel like you can't control it, and all you want to do is control it because
Yeah,
you want to have God look favorably on you, you know?
yeah. I mean,
And
what was it? The heaven's door is only so small, and only so many of us can get in. And if you're not good enough, you're not going to make it.
it's like narrow is the gate that leads to salvation,
Yeah,
stuff like that. It's crazy to think that like you get baptized and you think that you're saved, and then you immediately get into this feeling of just at war with yourself, and it becomes this weight that you have to carry, you know?
yeah, yeah. And it definitely did. It got very heavy.
Uh-huh. Um, so like, how did your friend react to you talking to him about like that?
I don't. But these days, I cannot recall us ever having another conversation, um, meaningful
Yeah,
conversation after that ever again. And I don't blame
yeah,
him. I don't
yeah.
blame him. I
Hmm.
mean, as soon as I got out of the car and he drove away, I already knew I'd screwed up.
Yeah.
But that was kind of like that war that I dealt with every day. It was the sometimes what I knew was right in
Mhm.
my heart and in my spirit, and what was being pushed on us as kids, I knew
Mhm.
it wasn't right. But we're not
Yeah.
allowed to speak up. We're not allowed to say anything. We're not allowed to question the authority.
Hmm.
and it's keep with the status quo.
Hmm. It's like what we needed were friends, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
We just needed friends to care about us, talk to us, to trust us, and like it's crazy to think that like you were having to deal with all of this stuff in like this 16-year-old mind.
There's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, we've all done things and said things to people in church and immediately thought it was wrong
Yeah,
at some point. There's not one of us who are part of this church that hadn't done something similar to that, you know.
yeah.
They in a lot of ways it was felt like you were being used. And it really was just to control us in some way, in a lot of ways.
There was a
Um,
lot of control.
because you couldn't date in high school. I mean, geez, that was a
I,
big
I
no-no.
I dated, like we went on dates. Like I got cookies and stuff, a
Mhm.
handful of times at least. But
Oh, good for you, those fucking cookies. Sorry.
eh, I heard. I listened. I've listened to your story.
It's fine. No, yeah, I mean, you would go on dates, but it wasn't to like
Yeah, it
date.
was just a friendship thing. It was like we were just hanging out. Like there was no. I knew she was my quote unquote sister,
Yeah,
and we weren't allowed to even do a frontal hug, let
yep,
alone anything else. So we were really just hanging out, and
mhm,
then you have to make me cookies.
yep.
This
And
is the
like,
thing. I didn't know that they weren't allowed to tell us no to a
yep,
date. I
yep.
didn't know that until just here recently listening to these. But
I
I
didn't
knew
know
that
that
they had
until
to,
I was out of the church as well, too.
my understanding was though that they had to make us cookies if they said yes and the date went well.
Yeah, because we need
But
a
I don't even know
reward.
if that
Yeah, boys
was so.
boys need a reward when they do well because that's the only way that we're going to be able to do well is if we get a pat on the back and we get a fucking cookie for doing anything halfway decent. So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, pretty much.
we are just we're basically animals that need to be housebroken and by doing and by get but also by giving us cookies, it's encouraging us because and that'll keep us from like straying to these wild women in the world that are gonna, want our loins.
Yeah, and they're
So
not going to make you cookies either.
they're not. They're gonna make you make them cookies. Um, yeah. I mean, it was such a wild thing. It's crazy to think that this whole like they couldn't say no. Um,
I just learned how to start telling some people no just this last year.
I mean, yeah, saying no is hard for a lot of us. I think we should be saying no a lot more. And I think the girl should have said no a lot more, or at least, God, I hate that. I hate that that was like the message, you
Yeah,
know?
I do too. I absolutely hate it. They should have had the freedom to tell us no and tell the guy they liked yes. And as guys, we should have had the freedom to walk over to the girl that we liked and just ask.
Because like what
You
was the
know?
what was the result of all that? It wasn't that we became these great people with like wonderful views on sex and relationships and all of that. I mean,
Mm-mm.
no,
No,
no.
absolutely
It's the
not.
opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm 38 and I'm 39 and I'm still not married and I still don't have kids. And I'm not going to
Yeah.
blame it on all of that, but stuff like that has not helped.
And I still need a fucking cookie for every good thing I do.
Well, now I'm thinking about cookies right now.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, so you get to this, so you kind of lose the friend. You're being ostracized by the church. Um, so was it like just this immediate like I got to get out of here, or was it like a slow
Man,
burn kind of thing?
I made mistakes. This is where I really started making some mistakes. I got really mad at God, and I got
Uh-huh.
really mad at people, and I turned my back on all of that. And after that, I went down some pretty rough roads. I got involved in drugs and alcohol pretty heavily. I got arrested about a dozen times over the
Hmm.
course of a few years. Wound up getting to do a little bit of state time, so I got to see the inside of a Georgia State Penitentiary for about a year and a half.
Hmm.
And I think I started coming out of all of that pain and just the repercussions from it about 4 or 5 years later. I went through about 4 or 5, maybe 6 years of really heavy drug and alcohol use.
And when you say like because of this, was it because of what happened at church or just an overall just the pain of everything?
Just the overall thing. I mean, the whole experience with Duck Dynasty stuff in Georgia. Like the first time I ever had a knife pulled on me was in Louisiana, and I was at a church. You
Mm.
know, so this all just added a lot of PTSD to my concept of God and Christianity, and it taught
Wait,
me
you had a
that
knife? I'm sorry, you had a knife pulled on you at church in
yeah,
Louisiana?
yeah.
Was it like a Pentecostal thing or it was just
You know what? I was visiting a church. I don't even remember what church we were at. I remember some
Mhm.
kids chased me out of the church wanting to fight me. And I remember one of them having his knee in my chest and a knife at my throat out in the yard out in front of the church. And this was like a late evening potluck kind of thing. So it was dark out.
Yeah.
But apparently, one of the elders or somebody there saw it and snatched the kid off of me. The funny thing was, I got in trouble for running through a flower bed. The kid didn't even get in trouble for pinning me down with a knife to my throat.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah. So that and then this. Yeah, I could see why you were mad at God or mad at church and mad at this.
yeah, mad at all things Christian, and I just for a handful of years there, I went I went wild.
Hmm.
I went wild. I absolutely lost it.
And did you, so you thought that like when you say like you were mad at God, like God did all this?
I just
From
felt
my
like
pers
I just felt like he had set me up to fail.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
know, like he had brought me into this great, wonderful environment where I was able to find, a pretty good level of happiness for quite a period of time. And
Yeah.
then in the end, it all just fell apart and crumbled. And I just kind of felt like I'd just been left all alone again.
Yeah. That sucks. It kind of sounds like you found the happiness while you were doing what they were expecting you to do. Is that safe
Yeah.
to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then,
I had never learned how to just be my own person and pursue my own happy.
mhm,
Like I didn't know how to cultivate or create my own happy atmosphere.
mhm.
And I just spiraled for a while.
So where'd you land?
Well, I got kicked out of the state of Georgia the last time I got in trouble there. So I landed back in Louisiana, and I I've got some stories, man. I don't so I believe in God.
Yeah. Mhm.
Have a relationship with a concept of a higher power, you know, and I tried to go to church a little bit. I've started kind of trying to put my foot or my toe back in the water this last year, and I mean, I've found some great churches. I've got some fantastic friends with, a normal understanding of all this stuff. And man, they love me and they want me to be there and I want to go. But at the same time, it's like I can't sit in that room without just
Mm.
vibrating head to toe with an overwhelming amount of anxiety. So it's kind of like every once in a while, like I have a good day on a Sunday morning, and I'll run down and I'll hear the message. But it's left me really, really messed up
Mhm.
about church and God and what all it means and what it means to other people versus me. And it gets really hard to do the whole church thing nowadays.
I mean,
But
I don't think anyone could blame you.
yeah, I mean, it just is what it is. It's hard for me to describe that to people here though, because like no one here even remotely can imagine what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the church I was a part of in East Cobb. It's no one understands. Like when I try to tell somebody here that I have PTSD surrounding church, we're just Bible Belt over here, and people look at me like, "Why would you have PTSD about church? What's wrong with you?"
I'll tell you. Well, I mean, yeah, man, me too.
And it's like I don't know how.
I got a list a mile long.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're in good company.
and then they're still just looking at you like you got to be making this up, and
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
no, not so much. So the God thing, when I got sober, they had their steps and all that
Yeah.
stuff, and I got to they promote a higher power of your own understanding,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
that allowed me to first kind of start looking at the God thing after a bunch of years of running from it, running from God, running from everything good and Christian, and that just opened the door up because I didn't have to call it God, I didn't have to call him Jesus, I didn't have to pray the way I was told to pray, I didn't have to believe the way other people believed. I could just start somewhere,
Isn't that the
and
most
wherever.
freeing feeling though?
It really was, and I've been able to build on that for the last well, yeah, I guess we're going on 14 years.
Wow.
So, and
14
it's
years
taken
sober?
me, that's debatable.
Sure. Okay.
Um,
I get what you're
I have,
saying.
I have prescriptions that,
It's fine.
spectrum related stuff, and every now and then it pisses somebody off, but that has more to do with their truth than it
Yeah.
does mine.
It's crazy to think about how we were just so fast to cut people off for things instead of asking, instead of talking. It was just so either or, you know?
I had to
And
cut everyone's existence with what I thought and with what
mhm,
I believed, and
yeah.
I couldn't understand individual, perspective.
Yeah, it just continues to blow my mind with every conversation that I have. Just this feeling of like, I mean, I'll probably talk about this every time, but just this lack of agency over our lives. Um, and just this like control that just like got into our brains, into our hearts. Um, we were just trying to do what we thought was right, you know? And
Yeah,
we see the world how we see it in whatever age we are, but like it's just that cutting off, just that hard cut off. It's
yeah,
just so fucking damaging. It does the opposite of what they think it's going to do, right?
yeah. It did not bring me back around at all.
Mhm. But people think that's what God's love is that hard line, you know?
I don't remember the Bible ever telling me to understand another person
Mhm.
or to even comprehend them for that matter.
Yeah. Mhm.
But this whole having to cut everybody else's life and actions with what I think, and then deciding I know people better than they know themselves, and not even being willing to listen to them or let them have a voice to speak. It's
Mhm.
yeah, it's damaging. It's almost like they taught me to be the biggest narcissist ever,
Yeah. Hmm.
at least for a period of time, because you were life in the way I thought you should life, or you were life in wrong.
Yep. 100%.
And it's been part of my problem with getting back to church, because you know they taught us that there's disciples and there's Christians, and you don't
Oh
really
yeah.
want to be a Christian, you want to be a disciple.
Yeah,
You
man.
know,
You can't just be a Christian and think you're going to get into heaven. Oh my God.
yeah,
Oh.
I
It's
remember
like
that
when
one.
it feels like when you get those like ads for something like a free whatever for such and such, but then as soon as you get in, you realize that free only gets you in the door. It's going to cost you a whole lot more money to get the actual product and those things, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's an accurate analogy.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think it's just it's such like opposite of what seems to me as I continue to read is the theme of all of this, you know?
Yeah,
Um, but it was just that feeling of like we were different. And so if we're different, we can't have any whispers of a black and mild. We can't have any whispers
nope.
of someone, a teenager in a relationship, you know, because that's not different. We were supposed to be stronger, you know. We were God's kingdom. And so in God's kingdom, teenagers don't date because teenagers can't handle it, you know?
It's such bull. It's such bull.
Yeah.
Like I hear it now, and I hear the rhetoric, and it's like I'm almost speechless.
Mhm.
But as a kid, it was just so easy to eat up and accept all of these things as truths.
Yeah. Of course, because you were being loved, you were being seen, you were being heard by people, and that feels fucking great.
Yeah, it does. It's a bit like
Especially
a drug.
yeah.
I actually compare it to what is it? Withdrawals.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
because I have this life, I have this friends, I have this, I have all this going on, and then just cold turkey, shut off.
Yeah.
And there's some emotional upheaval
Yeah.
that happens.
Yeah. Like, what am I gonna do now? You know?
Yeah,
That's what keeps
I
people
made new friends. I made new friends, and they smoked meth and marijuana, and they drank alcohol. That's what I did.
well, yeah. Yep. That's one thing to do. I think that's also one reason why people stay in our church so long is because they don't wanna lose it, you know?
Yeah,
But we find, you know, wherever community is, if it feels like it did, if it gives you a whisper of it, I'm not surprised that that's what you people run to, you know?
I just remembered. I say so. The very last time I ever went to any kind of an ICOC function, I had forgotten about this. Um, a friend of mine, Hugh, and Carolyn had come and visited me while I was in prison, and
Wow.
so when I got out, they were the only two people from the church the entire time through all of my getting in trouble who ever came and saw me ever, and they never had before up until then either. But either way, it was really nice of them to do that. But
Mhm.
that got me kind of back in contact, and so when I got released, I got invited to. I was college age now, but I'm not in college, and so I got invited to some apartment complex with a bunch of college age ICOC members. I was supposed to know a bunch of them. I got there, I knew a few people, but this is what I'm getting at. When I got there and I got out of my vehicle, you know how when everybody's been talking about you.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
So yeah, it was that, man. Like I got out of my vehicle and it's like people are looking and people are whispering, and I'm even seeing people kind of like cup their mouth a little bit while they talk, like, oh my God, that's him. That's there's the ex-con, there's the dirty prisoner. At least
Wow.
that's how it felt. So I hung out for about 10 or 15 minutes. It was the most uncomfortable feeling of my entire existence. And I just remember telling one of the guys there that I did know. I was like, man, I think I'm gonna go. And he was like, what, are you sure, man? Why don't you stay? And I'm just sitting here like, dude, if everybody here was looking at you the way they're looking at me, you wouldn't want to sit here any longer either.
Yeah, it sucks, man.
Yeah, yeah, I'd forgotten about that little occasion.
Yeah, there's a lot about that, you know, it's not surprising.
Yeah,
You get a whisper of that. Oh, here comes this person. But then it's like there's that like also that feeling of like I could see people being like, well, if that's the feather in the cap, if this guy comes back, you know,
yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah, that sucks. That's got to be hard.
I mean, like everybody would have found out eventually, anyways. I would have appreciated having the freedom to disseminate the information regarding my recent past, rather than just having it all laid out there for
Yeah.
everybody to talk about and discuss before I showed up.
It feels like it's the opposite of what you had in the beginning,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, well, when I first showed up, I didn't have a reputation to precede me.
Yeah.
No, and then coming back, it was just kind of like, guess who's back?
Yeah.
Or at least that was the feeling, anyways. That was the way it felt.
You didn't get the whole like, hey, it's great to see you, you know?
I mean, I did from like one or two other people, but when like the couple of people who are, everyone's kind of looking the whole time, kind of like
Hmm.
they're waiting to see what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Like, are you gonna
Hmm.
act out? Are you gonna flash out? Are you gonna pull some drugs out of your pocket while you're here? It was like everybody was waiting just to see, what's the junkie gonna do?
Yeah. That sucks. And
Yeah,
so and so then it was like, no more. I'm done. I can't do this.
yeah. I never went back to anything that they had going on ever again after
Hmm.
that. I got in trouble one more time, and that was when the state of Georgia said get out.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, what do you think, man? We were in a cult.
Yeah, yeah, yes. So I want to say, do you remember the news report that came out on the Atlanta news? I think it was 2001 or 2002. It was one of those 2 years, because Steve Sapp even had to. Sorry, dang it,
No, it's
last name.
fine. It's okay.
Um, Steve. Steve even preached a sermon on it one Sunday. He literally had to address the news that was on the night before, because they were talking about us and how we were a cult, and
Yeah.
they were even interviewing people openly on TV about us.
Yeah,
And
there was an ABC
yep,
there's an ABC special on us. Um there were cameras, people had brought cameras into a midweek and
I believe it.
stuff. It was that kind of thing. People also, I think, pretended to be like wanting to study the Bible. And I think they either, from what I'm hearing, is they filmed like one of the studies or something
Wow.
like that. Yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
just remember watching the report, and I remember us all sitting around basically beating our chests about
Yeah.
how like this solidified that we were doing the right thing, even though people are actively speaking out against you on national television.
Yeah.
Like, way to take none of that into consideration and just sit there and beat your chest. I'm the
Hmm.
best. I'm the best there is.
Hmm.
Because what was it? They wouldn't heap hot coals on our head, or that they'll persecute us when we're doing what's right. Well,
We
I forget the scripture.
if we get a whisper of negative comments about us, we used to think that meant we were doing it right.
Yeah.
Yeah. People love to take what this stuff and spin it into persecution, you know,
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah. I want to make it abundantly clear. Like I don't want to persecute God or Christianity or the Bible. I don't want to advocate for certain ways of doing it
Hmm.
because I know how it broke me.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, dude, we were absolutely in a cult. Like there was too much control, there was too much systematic oppression and gaslighting and narcissism and just one way arrogant thinking. Yeah, this I kind of wish I hadn't been in a cult, but
Hey, you're not in it
yeah.
anymore.
And no, I'm not anymore. But I think our parents were just trying to do what was. I asked my mom about it last week. I was like, "Mom, why were we even doing that?" And she was like, "You were happy."
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
there for a period of time I was, and that was all I ever really had to say was, "Mom, I like this." And
It's
I've got the kind of mom she'll part heaven and earth, and she'll do whatever she can. If I say I like this and this makes me happy as a kid, my mom loved her son.
Mhm.
There was no doubt about that.
Did she stay in it much longer than you?
She did for a little bit after. So there was a big thing about stealing money.
Mhm.
Apparently, we had a sermon one Sunday where the same guy had to apologize for misappropriating funds. And this was 2 weeks after explaining to everyone in front of service where his daughter's brand new Jeep came from. And 2 weeks later, he had to sit up there in front of everybody and tell us all that basically, yeah, I'd stole the money. So I took some money. I bought my daughter a brand spanking new Jeep Cherokee Laredo 4-wheel drive. And I just remember being back home and my mom being like, I don't know if I want to keep going.
Yeah.
And it was about that time everything kind of broke up into like smaller churches or whatever. And
Mhm.
I was starting to get into my drugs and alcohol. And I think mom went over to, there was a place in Alpharetta, I think,
Mhm.
that she went to a few times. It was over by her work. But I was done. I was done.
Yeah. Man, bought a brand new Jeep Cherokee Laredo. Man, must
Yeah.
have been nice.
Yeah. I bet. I bet
Yeah.
I was so in the wrong place, man. I was riding around in free cars.
Oh man, my cars usually came from police auctions or mechanics
Yeah,
growing up. Hmm.
yeah, same here.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
cheap as I could get them.
dude, well, thanks for sharing your story.
Well, Mr. Clemens, I really appreciate it. Like I mentioned, I prayed for this for a couple of years. When I got real angry and I dove into my drugs and alcohol, I remember thinking about that ABC News report, and I spent a couple of years praying that someday I would get an opportunity to speak my piece. And
Uh,
you've given me that opportunity, and I really appreciate you for that.
hey man, I appreciate you
As far as
sharing
I'm
this.
concerned, if anyone's doing God's work here, it's you.
Oh well, thank you for saying that, man.
Yeah,
You know, just trying to feel a little less crazy. I'm trying to heal just as much as you and everybody else is, you know?
this has been very therapeutic.
Cool. I'm glad.
Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Appreciate your words. And thank you guys for listening, all y'all, and your support in this. If you were a member of the ICOC, and you want to come share your story, positive, negative, whatever, please reach out to me at Clemens with a Z at gmail.com, or you can reach me at my Instagram page, Clemens with a Z. You can direct message me there. Till next time, guys. Peace.